I'm Laurel, 34, female, and I co-founded a boutique marketing firm with 2 friends about 6 years ago. We work with high-end brands, mostly luxury hospitality, fashion, and wellness. I think designer hotel chains, niche skincare lines, or European luggage startups that want to break into the North American market. Our work is intense, creative, and fast-paced. We're not just making pretty ads for Instagram. We build full campaigns, manage digital strategy, oversee influencer partnerships, and sometimes even sit in on product development meetings. None of that has ever mattered to my older sister Nadine. She's 36, a pediatric surgeon, and she's always made it clear that her job is the only one in the family that counts as real. For over a decade, at every family dinner or holiday gathering, she'd toss out comments like clockwork. When Laurel gets tired of playing entrepreneur, maybe she'll get a real job, or how many TikToks did you make this week? It was like a running joke, but not funny. Our parents never addressed it directly. They'd just glance at each other, smile awkwardly, and try to steer the conversation somewhere else. I'd usually just let it roll off, maybe throw back a sarcastic line if I was in the mood. But the truth is, those comments always hit harder than I let on, especially after weeks where I barely had time to sleep. It didn't matter how many contracts I closed or how much revenue we brought in. To Nadine, I was still just running some Instagram ad hobby. Her husband, Miles, is a different story. He's 38, has an MBA, and he's spent the past few years bouncing between startups and freelance consulting gigs. Mostly remote work, mostly finance adjacent. He's smart, measured, and surprisingly good at reading the room. Unlike Nadine, he never made digs about my job. If anything, we had a sort of polite distance. At family events, we'd chat briefly, usually about work. He always seemed to understand what I was building, even if we came from different industries. Things shifted about 2 months ago. We were at our parents' house for dinner. Just the 5 of us, me, Nadine, Miles, and our mom and dad. I mentioned, in passing, that my team had just wrapped a campaign for a luxury Swiss watch brand, and that we were flying to Copenhagen for a client shoot. Nadine didn't miss a beat. "Oh, so you're still peddling influencer watches?" She smiled like she'd said something witty, then kept eating. I didn't respond. No sarcastic comeback, no forced laugh. I just nodded. That moment stuck with me. Not because it hurt, I think I'd reached a point where it didn't anymore, but because it was the last time I gave her opinion any weight. A week later, our firm landed 2 major contracts back to back. One in luxury travel, another with a European skincare line. We were stretched thin and needed a strategy consultant, someone who could work closely with the creative team and help shape client pitches with a sharper edge. I kept thinking about something Miles had once said, probably a year earlier, during a casual conversation at a barbecue. He mentioned he was bored working with financial clients and would love to be part of a creative team, just once. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But now, it made sense. I didn't bring it up to Nadine. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even ask around informally. I just messaged Miles the next morning and asked if he'd be open to taking on part-time strategy work with a boutique marketing firm. He said yes. We met for coffee the next day, went over the scope, and by the end of the meeting, I offered him a 6-month freelance contract. He accepted on the spot. We onboarded him quietly, under an internal project alias. It wasn't about hiding, at least not at first. I just didn't want family drama bleeding into my work life. Miles jumped in like he'd been with us from the start. By the end of his 2nd week, he'd already helped tighten 2 pitch decks and suggested a campaign angle that ended up landing us the skincare account. We're 5 weeks in now, and it's like he's been part of the team for years. He works remotely, joins virtual sessions, and sends voice memos with feedback that always hit the mark. My creative director told me last week, I didn't realize how badly we needed someone like him until he showed up. As far as Nadine knows, her husband is between contracts and taking a short break to recharge. She hasn't mentioned anything else, and Miles hasn't let anything slip. He's been professional, respectful, and surprisingly invested. What makes it surreal is how normal it feels. No drama, no tension, just work. And yet, every time I see Nadine post some passive-aggressive quote about women faking success with followers and filters, I can't help but think, your husband is thriving in the exact space you've mocked for over a decade. She has no idea. And I don't know how long that will last. But for now, this is where we are. By the end of week 5, Miles had completely integrated into our workflow. He picked up our systems faster than most full-time hires, joined creative meetings with sharp, clear feedback, and brought in a fresh angle that helped us lock down a skincare brand out of Amsterdam. During the pitch, he suggested restructuring our value proposition to align with sustainability metrics, and that was exactly what won the client over. The founder emailed me afterward saying it was the most targeted strategy she'd ever seen. The team caught on fast. My co-founder, Adrienne, pulled me aside after one of the pitch sessions and asked where I found him. I just said a friend of a friend recommended him, which wasn't a lie. We kept things moving through our usual freelancer platform, so everything looked clean on paper. There were no mentions of me in his contract files or payment statements unless someone dug through internal Slack history, which nobody had a reason to. A couple of weeks ago, my parents hosted a barbecue. A just close family, me, Nadine, Miles, and our parents. First time I'd seen Nadine and Miles in the same place since he started working with us. I didn't think it would be an issue at first, but as soon as we were all in the same yard, I realized how thin the line was. Miles played it cool. When my dad asked how work was going, he said he was between contracts, helping a friend with some proposals here and there. Nadine didn't question it, just raised an eyebrow and moved on. Later in the afternoon, I mentioned my upcoming trip to Copenhagen. Our firm is doing a brand shoot for the new client. Nadine didn't miss a beat. She laughed and said something about how exhausting it must be to babysit influencers across Europe. Miles was sitting nearby with a drink, and when I glanced over, he looked at me for just a second too long. Guilt flashed across his face, quick but obvious. Then he changed the topic to something about flight delays in Europe, and everyone shifted with him like nothing happened. A week after that, I got a text from Nadine, totally out of the blue. She said she'd been thinking, and if my firm ever needed someone like Miles, she'd be happy to refer him. Said he was starting to get bored. I stared at the message for a while before replying with, "I'll keep that in mind." That was it. No emoji, no follow-up. I didn't bring it up to Miles. A few days later, we had a strategy session scheduled, just the two of us. We were mapping out a campaign roadmap, and in the middle of it, he brought up the dynamic between Nadine and me. He said it flat out, she's always had this strange bitterness toward me, and he never understood why. I kept things neutral and asked if he felt weird about working with me now that she might be suspicious. He didn't hesitate. Said she might be his wife, but that didn't mean she understood everything about how professional respect worked. He said I treated him like a real partner, and that was more than she had in years. That same week, we hosted a team dinner downtown to celebrate the skincare campaign, going live. Small rooftop spot, casual vibe, just good food and wine. Miles came along. It was the first time he'd met some of our remote staff in person. Everyone loved him. At one point, someone asked how long he'd known me, and we both answered at the same time, different versions, but close enough to sound natural. Nothing raised eyebrows. But the whole evening had this strange undercurrent, not romantic, just quiet tension. I caught myself watching him laugh with our graphic designer, helping one of our interns order food, and I realized just how quickly he'd become part of this team. It was like he belonged here all along. And it felt weird knowing he'd go home to Nadine, who still rolled her eyes every time my name came up. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I got a text from him. Just one line, "Thank you. This feels like what I should have been doing all along." I didn't reply right away. The next few days at the office moved fast. We onboarded another client and had our first internal briefing with them. Miles was part of it. He brought in a brand alignment chart before I'd even mentioned it, and our new client asked if he could lead the strategy calls moving forward. And just like that, Nadine's husband was running point on one of our biggest accounts, and she still had no idea. The part that caught me off guard wasn't the secrecy, it was how right it all felt. He wasn't just surviving in our space, he was thriving. He belonged. And somehow, the person who used to tear down my career at every family event had unknowingly pushed her own husband right into the center of it. None of this was planned. I didn't go into this to prove anything or get back at her. But watching it unfold day by day, it's hard not to notice the shift. She keeps mocking, rolling her eyes, pretending none of this matters. But meanwhile, the person closest to her has quietly chosen to step into my world, and he's not looking back. Things at work picked up fast. We were prepping for a strategy showcase for a regional award event, and the shortlist came out that Monday. Our firm had been nominated in the Innovation in Digital Branding category. It was a big deal for us, especially since the campaign we submitted had Miles as lead strategist. He had taken full charge of the metrics alignment and campaign architecture, and the nomination email even mentioned how cohesive the creative strategy execution was. Internally, we all knew that was about him. But around the same time, little cracks started showing. During one of our check-ins, Miles mentioned that things were tense at home. He didn't say much, just that the energy had shifted and that small conversations kept turning into arguments. A few days later, one of my project managers passed him in the hallway while he was on the phone. She heard him say something along the lines of, "You don't have to understand it, Nadine. Just respect it." Sell. The way she repeated it to me later made it sound like that wasn't the first time they'd had that argument. The real issue started with Instagram. We posted a short behind-the-scenes reel from our campaign shoot. It showed snippets of the planning team, the location scout, and a shot of the whiteboard Miles had set up during strategy prep. We always tag the team on those posts. Our social media assistant tagged everyone automatically, including Miles. The post went up at noon. By 2 p.m., we'd already had over 200 views, some from mutual acquaintances. I noticed the tag while scrolling and had it pulled immediately, but the views were already up. About a week later, Nadine called me. First time in months. She opened with a friendly tone, too friendly, and said she had seen something on Instagram and asked if Miles had been working with us. I told her he'd helped on a pitch a while back, but we hadn't brought him on beyond that. That wasn't a lie. Technically, he did help on one pitch early on. Just not only that, she said she was just curious, then dropped the subject. I warned Miles later that night. He listened, then just sighed. He said she probably already knew, but was waiting to see if either of us would admit it first. Apparently that same evening they had dinner together and she threw out a comment about him doing creative crap with me now. He didn't answer her. None of it touched his work. If anything, he doubled down. We had client calls, 2 proposal presentations, and internal team reviews all back-to-back that week, and he showed up to everyone on time, prepared and completely focused. No sign of any personal distraction. But still, I could tell something had shifted. So I set up a firm-wide meeting to go over professional boundaries. Not to call anyone out, but just to set clear expectations. We reviewed personal affiliations, conflict protocols, and confidentiality. Everyone understood. No one asked questions. Claudia, my best friend and also our firm's finance director, pulled me aside after the meeting. She said this was going to blow up, that Nadine wouldn't let this sit. According to her, this was the kind of thing my sister would drag through the dirt just to make a point. The next day, Nadine posted a Facebook status. It wasn't subtle. She wrote about people pretending to be CEOs with no medical degrees, playing business with hashtags and Canva templates. No names? But I didn't need one. A former client even messaged me with a screenshot and a question mark. I didn't reply. My parents called that night, not together, separately. My mother asked if there was any friction between me and Nadine, and my father said he felt like the family was walking on eggshells. Neither of them mentioned the Instagram post, but they were clearly hearing things. I told them I was busy with work and left it at that. By Saturday, I had mostly brushed it off. Then Nadine showed up at my apartment unannounced. She rang the bell and waited like it was a normal visit. I opened the door and found her standing there with a grocery bag, acting like she just happened to be in the area. She stepped inside, looked around like she was inspecting something, then asked if we could catch up. I made tea while she settled onto the couch like she hadn't been trashing my career all year. She asked about work. I kept my answers vague. She asked about the Copenhagen trip. I said it went well. Then, without changing tone, she looked up and asked, "So how long has Miles been working for you exactly?" She didn't blink, just sipped her tea and waited. When Nadine asked how long Miles had been working for me, she didn't blink. She kept sipping her tea like she was asking something casual, but her eyes didn't move. I paused for a few seconds, then said, "Why does it matter?" She didn't answer right away, just gave this sharp, short laugh and set her cup down harder than necessary. So it's true. She stood up and started pacing like she was trying to keep herself from yelling. She asked if this had all been some sort of revenge plan. If I'd waited for the perfect moment to humiliate her by pulling her husband into my company behind her back. She said I must have been enjoying the drama and accused me of using my business to get even. I stayed seated and told her, calmly, that it wasn't about her. Miles applied. He was qualified. I needed someone and I hired him. That was it. She didn't like that answer. She started accusing me of sneaking around, manipulating him, saying I'd lured him in on purpose to take control of her marriage. Before I could even respond, there was a knock at the door. It was Miles. He was there to pick her up. I opened the door, stepped back, and let him see for himself. He took one look at her pacing and asked if everything was okay. She ignored the question and stormed past both of us. They left without another word. About an hour later, I got a text from Miles. All it said was, "She's not speaking to me." Said I embarrassed her. The next morning, I woke up to a long message in our family group chat. Nadine had written a multi-paragraph rant about how I had crossed a line, disrespected her marriage, and kept secrets from the entire family. She ended it by saying she expected better from her own sister. Our father didn't reply. Our mother messaged me privately and asked what was going on. She was crying over the phone and said she didn't understand why I couldn't have just told Nadine in the beginning. I explained that I didn't feel the need to clear professional decisions with my sister, and that I wasn't hiding anything, it just didn't involve her. That evening, Miles called me from a different number. He said Nadine had given him an ultimatum. Either he stopped working with me, or she would start rethinking their living situation. I asked if he needed time to decide. He said he didn't. The next day, he came into the office and asked if I'd consider making his contract full-time. I agreed. We signed a new agreement that week. The mood at the office changed after that. Miles stayed focused, but he was clearly weighed down. He still showed up to every call, delivered every deliverable, but there were longer pauses between his jokes. His reports were just as sharp, but he wasn't as quick to smile. We didn't bring it up. The team gave him space. That Friday, my receptionist buzzed me and said someone was trying to see me without an appointment. It was Nadine. She was in the lobby, asking to speak privately. I told reception to let her know I wasn't available. She waited 15 minutes, then left. That night, around 9 p.m., I got an email from her personal account. The subject line said, "Conflict of interest." It was a typed message accusing me of professional misconduct. She claimed I had blurred family boundaries to gain access to sensitive information and threatened to report me to a business ethics board. She didn't say which one. There were no legal citations, no actual accusations backed with evidence, just vague language and dramatic wording. I forwarded the email to our in-house legal consultant. He called me the next day and said there was nothing there that posed a risk. No laws broken, no actual breach. Miles had signed standard agreements. Our hiring records were clean. But still, it was clear Nadine wasn't done. That weekend, Miles moved into a short-term rental. He didn't tell anyone except me and our office manager, since we had to update his address for internal filings. He didn't ask for time off. Just came in Monday, pulled up his notes, and got on with his day. Nadine's next move? No one was sure. But with her showing up at my office and sending legal threats, it was obvious this wasn't going to quietly fade. The line between personal and professional had officially snapped, and now it was all out in the open. Nadine's email didn't include any actual claims, just vague lines about me exploiting a family relationship for personal gain and blurring the line between personal loyalty and business ethics. It read more like a frustrated rant than anything formal, but I still forwarded it to our company's legal counsel to be safe. Our lawyer responded quickly. He said it was dramatic, but legally empty. There was no conflict of interest, no violation, and nothing she wrote held weight under any corporate regulation or code. After that, our human resources director sent out a general memo to the full team. It didn't name anyone, but it restated our policies on internal referrals, freelance contracts, and personal affiliations. The tone was neutral and focused on professionalism. It was enough to keep us covered if Nadine decided to escalate with a public complaint. Meanwhile, Miles found out about the email. He told me later he went straight to her and asked why she was trying to drag his work into their personal fight. She refused to take anything back. According to him, she said he was picking my side over hers. He didn't reply to that. Instead, he packed a few things and extended his stay at the rental he'd been using for a week. The next morning, I got a text from Nadine, no words, just 3 skull emojis. She blocked me right after, so I couldn't respond even if I wanted to. That week, 2 old friends who knew both me and Nade reached out. One messaged to say I was being cold and should have let Nadine know from the beginning. The other said Nadine had treated everyone like she was above them for years, and that this was just the first time someone didn't fold under it. I didn't respond to either. There wasn't anything left to say. Internally, the timing lined up with a big campaign shift. Our European fragrance client wanted to launch an influencer push across 3 cities. We needed someone to coordinate the brand narrative across platforms and markets. It was a senior-level role, and Miles had already started laying the groundwork weeks ago. I offered him the title of lead strategist on the project. He accepted, but asked me not to make a public announcement. No LinkedIn updates, no social media post, just a quiet promotion inside the team. We respected that. A few days later, our father tried to play peacemaker. He emailed everyone in the family to suggest a dinner at their house. He said we needed to talk things through. Nadine replied to the thread first. She said she wouldn't show up unless I gave a public apology for undermining her marriage and humiliating her in front of the family. I didn't respond. The dinner never happened. That same weekend, Nadine posted something on her private Facebook account that wasn't private at all. It was a long paragraph about how some women weaponize ambition to dismantle families and how certain people use their careers as a mask for personal failure. She didn't tag anyone, but within an hour, one of our old classmates tagged me in the comments, asking what was going on. I deleted the tag and blocked the classmate. Our next pitch meeting was in 3 days, and I didn't want anything leaking into our client channels. I reached out to a reputation consultant, someone one of our clients had used during a past PR mess. She had a background in subtle media corrections and online narrative management. Within a day, she had a full mini campaign designed. We pushed out content about team ethics, workplace transparency, and the importance of internal boundaries in family-run businesses. We didn't mention Nadine or even hint at drama, but the message landed. While that was happening, Miles and I had a longer talk in the office, not about work. He told me, flatly, that he didn't think the marriage was going to recover. He wasn't angry, just tired. Said he'd been trying to keep up appearances for years. That was all. Then he opened his laptop and joined the next Zoom call like nothing happened. Then came the weirdest twist so far. Nadine's office assistant emailed me. Not through any shared contact, she used the hiring form on our website. She said she'd heard about the kind of work culture we were building, and if I was looking for someone detail-oriented with surgical scheduling experience, she was available. The last line read, "If you're anything like what Miles described, I'd love to work for you." I didn't respond right away. I flagged the message, let it sit in my inbox. It wasn't about hiring her. It was what it meant. The cracks were showing, and people were paying attention. Whatever story Nadine had been trying to push, that I was the younger sister with the silly little business, the one playing office while she saved lives, was starting to fall apart. Not because I tried to tear it down, but because she couldn't stop drawing attention to her own collapse. An email came in on a Thursday afternoon from a podcast production team that covers women in marketing leadership. They said they'd been following our recent campaigns and wanted to invite me on for an episode. What caught my attention was the second paragraph. They mentioned that one of the reasons they were reaching out was because of our innovative strategist, Miles Dalton. They'd seen one of our recent campaigns and credited its structure to him. I sat with it for a day. Things with Nadine had already blown up offline, then online, then again in group chats and passive-aggressive Facebook posts. Going on a public platform, even if it was work-related, could turn the whole thing into something worse. But the truth was, hiding hadn't helped. So I said yes. I sent back a reply and confirmed that I'd do it on one condition: no personal questions. I made it clear the interview had to stay focused on work, leadership, and company growth. They agreed. We recorded that Sunday. The episode dropped the following Friday morning. It wasn't sensational or dramatic, just a 45-minute conversation about how our firm scaled, what challenges women face in leadership roles, and how strategy and creative work best when they're aligned. I gave credit where it was due. Miles' name came up twice, once during a campaign breakdown and once in response to a question about team dynamics. By noon, the podcast was trending on LinkedIn. It got reposted by a few industry names and picked up by 2 marketing newsletters. Our firm's inbox got 2 client inquiries before the day ended. By Saturday morning, we'd received 6 new portfolio requests. At 2 p.m. that Saturday, I got a message on my phone. It was from Nadine. Just 3 words: "You're unbelievable." Nothing else. She had already blocked me weeks ago, so she must have created a new number just to send it. I blocked that one too. Later that night, my cousin messaged me privately and told me Nadine had heard the episode. She was at home, listening with her laptop open, and when Miles' name came up, she stood up, screamed, and threw her phone against the kitchen wall. It shattered. Apparently, she didn't even bother picking it up after. By Monday morning, Miles had received a draft legal notice from Nadine's attorney. It wasn't dramatic, it was cold and formal. The draft petition cited emotional abandonment and breach of trust due to conflict of interest. Miles met with his own attorney, reviewed it, and signed the official divorce filing later that week. Quietly. No shouting, no revenge posts, no dramatic messages. He just handled it. The part that went public wasn't from either of us. It came from a burner account under the podcast's Instagram post. The comment accused me of stealing someone's husband and dismantling a home for the sake of career gain. The writing style was familiar. Within a few hours, a few people started replying. One user pointed out that the account was only following people from Nadine's hospital. Another recognized the language from one of her older posts. Someone took a screenshot and reshared it in a group story, tagging the podcast and joking, and the surgeon enters stage left. It snowballed from there. The account went private, then disappeared. That Monday, I called a team meeting before the workday started. Everyone had seen the post. I didn't need to explain it. I just reminded them that we're a business first, that we operate with professionalism, and that we don't engage in personal back and forth online. They all agreed. No one left. No one hesitated. If anything, they leaned in harder. That afternoon, Miles delivered the campaign deck for our fragrance client. It was clean, polished, and right on time. That same evening, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize at first. It was a classmate of Nadine's from her medical school cohort. The message was short. She said she bullied people for years. Good for you. I archived it after reading it once. By midweek, I finally booked an appointment with a therapist. It wasn't dramatic or a breakdown moment. I just needed to sit with someone outside of this entire circle. I spent the session going through the events in order, starting from the day I messaged Miles about the freelance contract. That Friday, Miles signed his official full-time contract with the firm. No launch post, no press release, no internal party. Just a quiet signature on paper and a new badge on his employee profile. None of this was supposed to be a story, but it became one anyway. Loud, messy, visible. And now there's nothing left to hide. The divorce was finalized last week. No court drama, no delays, just signatures and silence. Miles sent me a message that morning. It said, "It's done. Nothing else. No ceremony, no fanfare." After everything that had unfolded, it ended with a text and a line break. We planned a lunch that weekend, not for business, not about clients or campaigns. Just two people who had managed to survive the storm Nadine had pulled us both into. We met at a small place off the main road. No one from work, no one from our personal circles, just us and a couple of hours to talk. He said the truth plainly, he had been unhappy for years. He didn't act on it sooner because people treat divorce like failure, and walking away from a marriage to a respected surgeon felt like a social red flag. It wasn't easy to explain to friends or family why he wanted out, when on paper everything looked perfect. He also made one thing very clear. There was never anything romantic between us. We were two professionals who built something meaningful together. That's it. There was never a line crossed, never a secret relationship. Just mutual respect in a space where both of us were finally allowed to be taken seriously. Since the divorce was finalized, Nadine hasn't tried to reach out. No text, no emails. She removed me from every platform and blocked my number again. The only thing she did was send a small padded envelope to my office, no return name. Inside was the necklace I gave her 5 years ago for her birthday, a silver pendant she used to wear all the time. Taped to the chain was a sticky note that read, "You can have your little victory." Nothing else. No signature. I didn't respond. I placed the necklace in a drawer in my office and haven't looked at it since. At home, things stayed quiet. Our parents kept trying to balance the two sides, but something shifted. Last weekend, our father pulled me aside after dinner and told me he was proud of what I built. Said he wasn't sure Nadine ever really understood the work I did, but he had always watched. That was all. He didn't say it loud. He didn't write it in a message. Just leaned in, said it, and walked away. Our mother hasn't said much. She did bring up my father's birthday next month. She asked if I'd consider inviting Nadine, said it might help ease the tension. I told her I'd think about it. I haven't decided. At work, Miles has completely stepped into his new role. He led a pitch last week for a new tech wellness brand that's expanding across North America. He handled the whole presentation solo, client strategy, brand positioning, projected campaign performance. Closed the contract within 2 days. It was the largest quarterly deal we've signed since our firm started. No one in the room doubted he belonged there. What surprised me was how this entire situation, with all the tension and public fallout, didn't break our team culture. It did the opposite. People showed up for each other. Every time something ugly went public, our team pulled in closer. People started taking ownership in a way I hadn't seen before. No one whispered behind screens. No one asked invasive questions. They focused on the work, on protecting each other, and on moving forward. We were nominated for a Regional Innovation Award last month. The gala was last Friday. We won. When I got on stage, I thanked the team and ended my speech with a quiet nod to Miles. I called him the strategist who taught us to look at things sideways. I didn't name him. Not because I was trying to keep him hidden, but because I didn't want him to become the headline again. This time, the focus was on the work, where it should have been all along. These days, I've started journaling again. Just a regular notebook and pen. I don't talk about any of this online anymore. No comments, no responses, no energy wasted on the outside noise. I needed to get back to quiet routines. The kind that don't require a screen. In the end, this was never about revenge. It wasn't a plan to get back at someone or win anything. It was work. Real work. The kind people like Nadine never understood. She mocked it for years, rolled her eyes at every project, dismissed every client, and the person closest to her ended up thriving inside it. That's not revenge. That's just what happens when people write off what they don't understand. And eventually, the universe answers for you. She mocked my job. Her husband found purpose in it. That's not irony. That's karma, wearing business casual and holding a signed contract.